Welcome to the Bucky Brooks Show. I am Bucky Brooks, and I am excited to do a Jaguars only podcast. So we're going to talk about my Jags down in Duval. They're in the middle of training camp, getting it going. It is beginning to heat up, and there's a lot of news and notes and buzz coming out of Duval. And I got to say this, man, like having been down there, having had a chance to watch the team, really impressed with the way the team looks. Year two can be so different than year one in terms of the feel of training camp. Everyone knows exactly what the expectations, the standards are. And as you settle into the offensive and defensive schemes, a lot of times you can see guys go from good to great. And one of those guys that is really buzzing and people are talking about nonstop, and I saw it firsthand, Parker Washington. Parker Washington quietly might end up being the Jaguars' number one receiver. Now, hear me out, because this is not being disrespectful to Brian Thomas Jr. or Jacoby Myers or even Travis Hunter. But when we talk about number ones, what I'm talking about is having the trust and the confidence of the coaching staff and the quarterback. And I'm going to say, when you look at Parker Washington's continued development since he stepped into the league, man, you get the feeling that he's kind of settling in and being one of those guys. If I could liken him to anybody, kind of reminds me a little bit of how Amon-Ra St. Brown has been able to dominate for a while for the Detroit Lions. Now, I'm not putting Parker in that category, but I can see the Jaguars begin to utilize him in a way that mimics the production that St. Brown has been able to have and produce for the Detroit Lions, and also the impact that he's had on their passing game. When I look at Parker Washington, I think it's really important to go back and talk about who he really is. So coming out of Penn State, look, he was a guy that early on handled all of the return duties for the Jags in the punt return game. Last year, I mean, I think you could have made the case that he should have been a Pro Bowl return specialist, given the way that he was making so many impactful plays in the kicking game. When I was a player first, and then when I was a scout, we always talked about wanting guys at receiver that had punt return backgrounds. During my time with the Green Bay Packers, under Mike Holmgren, but really under Ron Wolf, we always talked about the importance of having guys with punt return backgrounds. It's significant because, one, there's a toughness factor. Two, there's a run after catch dimension that they bring to the field. And when you get them in space, the big plays happen. Well, when you look at Parker Washington, it's not a coincidence that on some of these catch and run concepts that the Jaguars are featuring prominently, he is beginning to produce big plays. We saw that down the stretch last year when he had to step up and step in for Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, when he got a bigger role and was able to play with the starters and was counted on to make plays and move the chains. We saw his ability, his toughness, his strength really set the table for this offense on these intermediate concepts where he's able to catch the ball on the move and kind of break tackles and make things happen. Well, now what we're doing is we're seeing a guy who is a great playmaker after the catch. We're beginning to see him show more polish and refinement as a route runner. We're seeing him take on more responsibilities as a guy that can play outside, can play inside, can move around the formation to do anything. We're beginning to hear more buzz about him being involved in all of the packages, meaning whether they're in 11 personnel, one back, one tight end, three wide receivers, he's on the field. Whether they're in 12 personnel, one back, two tight ends, two wide receivers, him being on the field. Where they're in 22 personnel, two backs, two tight ends, one wide receiver, we're hearing the conversation about Parker Washington being on the field at all times. What does that mean? Well, that means that he is being valued at a high level because the team can trust him. Not only the coaching staff trusting him to know exactly what to do, but coming through, but now 16 developing that trust and chemistry with him. How does that exist? How does that go forward? Well, I found it interesting. Like Travis Hunter was talking the other day, and he was talking about trying to be the first one in the building, but it's so hard because no one can beat Parker Washington in the building. First one in, last one out. So what I'm getting, the vibes that I'm getting, oh man, he's going to outwork and outlast everybody. And when you outwork and outlast people, meaning you have the competitive stamina to be the number one playmaker, the guy that you count on when all the chips are down, when the game is on the line. Hey, I can count on you because you outworked everybody. So you've developed the chemistry and connection with the quarterback that, hey, if the ball is going somewhere, it's going to number 11. Well, that has been earned. That's not given. Now, that doesn't mean that the other guys can't take the mantle and can't have bigger roles. But I would say everything that we're hearing, everything that we're seeing down in Jacksonville, Parker Washington is kind of settling and quietly becoming that number one playmaker and pass catcher that we can lean on in the passing game. And I love it, man, because worker bees should always be rewarded. And there is no one that has worked harder than Parker Washington since stepping in first as a wide receiver 4, then moving up to the third receiver, to now being a guy that we're kind of counting on to be a starter who might be the number one playmaker in the passing game. Hats off to him. Good things should happen to good people, and good people deserve to get it when they work hard. No one has worked harder than Parker Washington. That's why we got to celebrate him for being a guy that could be the top playmaker in this offense when it's all said and done. Second thing that has stood out in training camp, Liam Cohen and these guys talked about all spring that the spring was going to be for the passing game. The summer was going to be for the running game. And so during OTAs and mini camps, we saw the ball flying all over the yard. They were throwing the ball, trying to get the timing down with the passing game, talking about the chemistry and the connection with Trevor Lawrence and the playmakers. And even though I talked about Parker Washington, I talked about the rest of the guys because this might be one of the most talented wide receiver core that we've seen down in Jacksonville. And that says a lot when we've seen Jimmy Smith and Keenan McCardell. We saw others kind of roll through there, but this group is balanced. And that means that we're going to have an opportunity to be super explosive down in Jacksonville. But the thing that was really important in the summertime, you got to build out the running game. Now, why are the Jaguars putting more of an emphasis on the running game in the summer? Well, because in the summertime, you can put the pads on in training camp. Can't put the pads on. So there are a few elements that have to exist for the running game to be very successful. One, you got to be physical at the point of attack. It has to be about moving people off the ball. Well, now that we have the pads on and we're beginning to get to it with the clacking, we can see who's physical at the point of attack when it comes to the offensive line versus the defensive line. Also, some of the guys that we're counting on in 12 and 13 personnel, can they dominate the edge defenders? Whether that's Nate Borkicher, whether that's Quentin Morris, whether that's Tanner Koziel, or even Brenton Strange, can they win their one-on-one blocks on the edge? Because their ability to win those matchups expands the playbook and the options for Liam Cohen when it comes to how I want to kind of reshape and recobble the personnel groupings and the formations to create advantages in the run game. People have talked about the league-wide trend where teams are going more 13 personnel, 1 back, 3 tight ends on the field. The reason they're doing that because it creates extra holes at the point of attack. More importantly, it creates sizable advantages for physical tight ends against little DBs and linebackers. The pads have to come on so you can confidently feel good about putting more of these guys on the field and maybe having a little diversification in terms of how you operate from a personnel and formation standpoint to find those little advantages in the margins of the running game. Well, the pads are needed because you got to have some live work to be able to see if my theories and my tactics can come to fruition when it comes time to get about it and to make it about toughness. Well, the toughness, the timing comes with the pads on. But it's not only about the run game operating probably with more opportunities in the summer. Right now, Liam has talked about they're probably operating at a 3-to-1 rate in plays in some of these team periods because they want more runs than passes because they want to make sure that the running game gets off and going. And remember this, last year, the running game was a bit of a disappointment in some of these critical moments. Well, the only way to address it, rep it, practice it, review it, then rep it again. Well, the only way you can do it is we got to put in the pads on to see what's real and what's imagined. Because sometimes when we don't have the pads on, we can talk about like, hey, this guy will make this tackle, this guy will make this block. Well, now that we're in pads on and we're going live, you can see that. But also understand this about the summertime and why the renewed emphasis on the running game is really important. You lost Travis Etienne. When Travis Etienne leaves, you got to figure out who's the number one running back. Chris Rodriguez is comes over from the Washington Commanders, but we haven't seen him play in the lead role. Now, what the coaches will tell you and what you can see with your eyes, man, this dude runs through contact. He is a physical runner who gets after it when he has the ball in his hands. And even though he's still kind of shaking off some of the rust, you can feel it. You can see what it's going to look like when he has an opportunity to be the lead runner in some of these packages. But the same can be said about the young guys, whether it's Bashaw Tutin or Laquent Allen. They both have their own roles within this offense. And Tutin, people will talk about the speed, the straight line speed that shows up and shows out when he gets a chance to get to the perimeter. But has he become better with his vision, his balance and body control in between the tackles? As this team has shown early, more wide zone, more things that are to the edges, a physical running game with Tutin being able to get to those cracks and creases, the pads, the physicality, all has to be combined with precision. So we get the physicality and the precision of the running game with the young backs hitting the red insert points and then showing people that, hey, I not only get what is blocked, but I can get a little extra because of my physicality and toughness. We're seeing that first from Rodriguez, and we're seeing better balance and body control from Bashaw Tutin. The guy who's a bit of the wild card is Laquent Allen. Heard Grant Udinski talk at a most recent press conference. He talked about, man, this guy could be the ultimate third down back. Not only because he can catch the ball out the backfield and he also can run it on the edges or between the tackles, but he's probably the best pass protector. His blocking makes it such. Well, as we think about third down, most people think about money down being a passing down. Well, what if Laquent Allen is able to be that guy that can get you on some of these delayed draws, these things where we flip it to him out the backfield on some of these toss crack plays where you're trying to get him on space where it's a one-on-one, two-on-two situation with the blocker and him taking on the defense. Laquent Allen has an opportunity to be a contributor. What I love about what they're doing, what the Jaguars are doing right now is they're putting more of an emphasis on this in training camp so we can see it. I think a lot of times we can always theorize and say, hey, this looks good. We look at the X's and O's. We look at some of the things in OTAs and camp and say, hey, let's rock with it. But you can't rock with it until it's documented. Training camp has given us an opportunity to really document not only what schemes work well for the personnel that we have, but which personnel needs to be in the game when we get a chance to see good on good competition. And then finally, which running backs should be married to which plays. Every running back has a play or two that kind of falls into the sweet spot of their game. As we're putting the pads on more and as we're seeing the renewed emphasis on the running game because it's become more physical in training camp, we now are better able to assess which players should be on the field to run these handful of plays. And as we begin to think about the packages, the physicality that we've seen from these training camp sessions will allow Liam Cohen to better package which players should be in the game in pivotal moments. All right, guys, I got to tell you a quick story. And I know we're in the middle of pod and those things. I normally try not to divulge too much personal stuff, but I got to say this, man. I am in the mix of looking for a landscaper because I had a previous guy kind of drop on me, and I've been searching everywhere trying to find these people. And so sometimes it takes a friend of a friend to kind of lead you that way. And it doesn't seem like a big ask, but sometimes it can be a lot for someone to go the extra mile and kind of help you do it. So I have a guy who has helped me, my guy, Jose, who has really left a positive impression on me because he just does the little things well. And so he just started, he's doing all the other stuff. He's taking care of all the stuff. You take the trash cans around to the front and kind of do the extra stuff that you don't even ask him to do. And so me, as a business owner, if I'm hiring, I want a great candidate who can also go the extra step and kind of help me and stand out from others. And so that's why I am all about ZipRecruiter, because right now you can try it out for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio and find guys that can help you beyond what the job description is. And ZipRecruiter has a new feature that'll show you the most interested and qualified candidates first, so you meet the right people faster. ZipRecruiter has powerful matching technology. They find the qualified candidates quickly, and the candidates can tell you in their own words why they're interested in your job. It's no wonder why ZipRecruiter is the #1 rated hiring site based on G2. Try ZipRecruiter, meet great candidates who will go the extra step for you. I just love what I'm seeing, and I understand why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try for free today at ziprecruiter.com/audio. That's ZipRecruiter/audio. ZipRecruiter, meet your match on ZipRecruiter. Finally, I got to say this about Liam. One of the things, and maybe I should have led off with it, the mindset thing, right? The mindset in terms of how this team can go forward and make the jump from good to great, which is the hardest thing to do. Consistency in this league is really, really hard, which is why we always see on average 5 to 6 teams flip in terms of being playoff teams to being out the next year. If Liam Cohen and the Jaguars want to sustain their success and defy the odds, it's going to take a special team with a special mindset to be able to do it. That's why I love the peek inside the team meeting room where you heard Liam Cohen talk about this. Anyone, anywhere, anytime. Meaning, man, the Jaguars are willing to spot the ball, put it down, and play whoever, wherever, whenever, because they don't care. Well, there's a toughness that comes along with taking that kind of mindset and putting it out there. Liam has talked about a prove it attitude, meaning no matter what has happened before us, we'll continue to prove it each and every day, each and every week. The Jaguars are walking into the season with a bit of a chip to prove to people that last year's performance, last year's production was not a fluke. Well, to do it each and every day, man, you got to bring it. You got to make sure that you find a way to make it happen. And you not only find a way to make it happen, but you embrace what it is when it comes down to it. I like that, man. I like the attitude. I like what I'm seeing. But more importantly, I like that Liam is doing it with the team, but he's also doing it with players. Now, we've heard this, right? So in a previous episode, I talked about Trevor Lawrence being ranked somewhere in tier 2, kind of down near the bottom. Maybe he was ranked 16th among all quarterbacks. Man, do you know how disrespectful that is for a guy that finished in the top 5 in the MVP race to kind of be viewed as a guy that is a second-tier quarterback in the bottom of the second tier, not even more so really third tier than second tier? Well, Liam loves all of that conversation. And to me, this is why those odds on FanDuel Sportsbook should be played, because when I'm looking and thinking about the odds, Trevor Lawrence right now over 3,750 in terms of 3,750 and a half pass yards. Are we going over that? Well, man, that payout, those odds are minus 114. I'm going to take that. Trevor Lawrence had a 4,000-yard season. He didn't get cooking until the last half of the year. I am more inclined to play that because, look, Liam talked about it. The mindset of this team is to prove it, to be relentless with your approach, to be able to take on anyone, anywhere, anytime. Well, the only way that you're going to do that, you got to have a quarterback that is willing to do that. And as we see this team, even though we talked about them emphasizing the running game, as we see this team lean a little more on Trevor Lawrence to kind of be that dude, I think we're going to see this performance. But part of the reason they're able to lean on him is because Liam has talked about the toughness that this team needs to have, the mindset that this team needs to have, the edge that they're chasing. Well, if Liam is chasing it and the quarterback is chasing it, the rest of the team is going to chase it. And that's why I am so optimistic this year about the Jaguars, not only being able to replicate some of their success when it comes to being able to capture the division, but why I expect the Jaguars to make that jump from good to great this season. Not only because Liam is demanding it from everybody, every practice, because the team is demanding it from each other. And when you have a player-led team that also echoes the sentiments that you're hearing from the coach each and every time he stands behind the mic, that's when you know this team is going in the right direction. So far, so good. 2 weeks into training camp, Jaguars look good. I kind of like what I'm seeing, and I feel good about the progress. So next time on the Bucky Brooks Show, we're going to kind of continue to talk about this team evolving. We're getting closer to the Jaguars playing a game. Look, next week, they're going to tee this thing up against the New Orleans Saints. But before they tee it up, they're going to have a joint practice. Might be there to check it out. And if I'm there, you certainly know that I'm going to talk about it. Excited about that. So make sure you come back to the Bucky Brooks Show. Not only get all the things that you want to know around the league, but to get Jaguar-specific content, because as we begin to get into the preseason and I take on their color TV duties during the preseason, have more insight and perspective on how this team is being built. So next time, come back to the Bucky Brooks Show. Make sure you check out all the cool things that we're doing at Believe. Rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I'm out.